Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from chapter 13, Nature and Joy of Consciousness. Is it? Text 8 to 12, page 572. So they've been reading this verse all week for the last 4 or 5 days. So we can just chant the English translation altogether. Humility. Everyone can chant. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, perception of evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness, amid pleasure and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge. Besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. Om Arya Tram Dasha Jana Jana Stakaya Sakshu Mitem Zaina Tasme Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivastava Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Purport. This process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity, but actually this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a cause made of the 24 elements. Sorry, I read that wrong. This soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made by the 24 elements. And the process of knowledge described here is a means to get out of it. So today we're going to talk about three items in the purport. One is false ego, the other is stress of birth, death, old age, and disease, and detachment from children, wife, home, and the rest. And that starts on page 2576. So I'll read each paragraph first and then talk about that. Page 576, false ego. False ego means accepting this body as oneself. When one understands that he's not this body and his spirit soul, he comes to his real ego. Ego is there. False ego is condemned, but not real ego. In the Vedic literature, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 1.4.10, it said, Ham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am spirit. This I am, the sense of self, also exists in the liberated stage of self-realization. The sense of I am is ego, but when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, ego, but when the sense of self is applied to reality, this sense of I am is ego. But when the sense of I am is applied to this false body, it is false ego. But when the sense of self is applied to reality, that is real ego. There are some philosophers who say we should give up our ego. But we cannot give up our ego, because ego means identity. We ought, of course, to give up the false identification with this body. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Benares, he would meet the Mayavadi sannyasis, and they'd say, Om Namo Narayan, and Lord Chaitanya would address them, would say, Krishna Mate Astu, because they had this false conception that they could become Narayan, that they could give up their identity and as an individual and merge into the Brahman, become one with Narayan. But Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at the age of 24. He took Mayavadi sannyas from Keshavarti, because that was a social convention at that time. But he always wore Vaishnav tilak and remained a Vaishnav. He never became a Mayavadi. He would not associate with the Mayavadis when he was in Benares. So he would say, Krishna Mate Astu, may Krishna bless you. The same way, when we meet people on the street, we say Hare Krishna. They say hello, good morning, we say Hare Krishna. So, this idea of false ego. Ego means the ego is always there, but there's the false ego and the real ego. And the living entity comes into the material world, becomes covered by the three modes of material nature, and he gets a gross body made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and he gets a subtle body made of false ego, mind, and intelligence. So that accompanies the soul, the false ego, or identity, accompanies the soul through 8,400,000 species of life. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, 11th Canto, Chapter 2, text 37, that false fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering and fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotion to the Lord under the guidance of the spiritual master, whom he should accept as his worshipful deity and as his very life and soul. So it is it's only because of the false ego, which includes the mind, intelligence, and mind and intelligence, the person misidentifies himself with this body. And it's a the entangling, the living entity is entangled by this false conception. The whole material world is going on under the misconception that false names and false forms. So people think that I'm Chinese and I'm black, or I'm white, or I'm American, I'm Indian. Because it's all over the world, people have these different false identification. Jivar Sarup Krishna Nitya Das, that the identity of every living entity as spirit soul is the eternal servant of Krishna. We're not any of these designations. We're not black, we're not white, we're not Chinese, we're not Muslim, we're not Christian, we're not this or that. These things are temporary, illusory things which come at the time of birth. When we take birth, in a certain circumstance, we get we develop a certain identity. But it's not the reality, it's false reality. It's a temporary illusion to think that people think in this way. And Lord Chaitanya came Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. He came 500 years ago to teach us Vairagya Vidya, or detachment from the material body, and to teach us the process of devotional service. So by performing devotional service, Srila Prabhupada established an international society of Krishna consciousness where people from all over the world can cooperate, or he wanted everybody from all over the world to cooperate together to take the Krishna consciousness, spread Krishna consciousness, and try to help the misconception that this modern civilization has, and the standard of happiness and the problems that have arisen from the idea that someone in the material world can be happy, and that by modern technology that this will make one happy. So they invented all these different things for the people to facilitate their false ego, and to give them a false assurance that someday they're going to be happy. It's like the duck runs in back of the ass or donkey and sees its testicles and thinks that's the fish, and it's going to fall down at some time. And it never actually does. It's a false ego. The will-o'-the-wisp, the flower in the sky. They're all making so many promises that in the future we're going to stop old age. In the future we're going to stop death. But at the same time, they're trying to stop death. They're having abortions. So in the same hospital, they're trying to cure people and save people from dying, and they're killing the living entity in the womb before it even takes birth. So this is all topsy-turvy. In Vrindavan, the Yamuna is supposed to be flowing into Vrindavan, but the government has dammed it off in certain places, so only 3% of the Yamuna water is actually coming in from the Gangotri from the Himalayas. But in the rainy season they have to open the dams. But they've done demoniac things like that, and they've paved all the roads. The Parikram Marg used to be sand, easy to walk on, but they paved all the roads to make it harder to walk, so the cars could go through, so they could have more traffic jams. So in this way, they're thinking their modern technology is called Maya Sukaya. It's a trick of Maya, which makes people think that they're going to be happy if they get that big car, if they get that big house, if they get that big television. All these things are making people think that they're going to be happy in this life. And you may be happy for a few moments, but it's really not doesn't really give anyone happiness. Having a big car, or having a big house, or having so many things, having the best cell phone, this doesn't really solve the problem of the false, doesn't relieve one of his false ego, which is thinking that I'm a matey, that I'm this body, and everything belongs to me, is mine. I, me, mine. So the 10 offenses to chanting the holy name. The 10th offense is to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions, which means to still think I, me, mine, that I'm this body. And also to be inattentive while chanting. And the 10th offense is the root of all the other offenses. So we have to give up this false identity and at least philosophically understand that I'm not this body. And I'm not this, even though, because of the modes of material nature, living entity comes in the material world, the body and the soul are seem to be attached to each other, but the soul is not in any way attached to the body. It's like a coconut. The outside shell is hard. The coconut inside, if it's a ripe coconut, you can shake it. The inside is loose. It's not connected. So the soul is not really connected with the body, but it's because of the false identification. And Bhagavad Vidyabhushan says that the soul, somehow we become glued to the body due to the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So in this way, it is a problem in the world that the whole world is going on this false conception that I'm this body, and false names, false forms, and because of this, there's always some upheavals, that the wars are there because people think that this is my land, or this is your land, or this is my property, this is their property. So people are always some fighting going on over who owns what. But when you come in the material world, no one owns anything. And when you leave the material world, you can't take anything with you. So you think that this, whatever I have that belongs to me, it belongs to you. Is not that it doesn't. It's not that it's not real. It's not my body philosophy. My bodies say Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, that the whole world is false. It's not real. But it's not that it's not real, but it's temporary. These things are real. We're real. We're persons. We have body. We have mind, intelligence, false ego. But these are only temporary things. So at the time of death, yam yam vapi smaram bhavam, whatever you're thinking about, that you will attain your next life. So Krishna's movement is meant to train us so that we can think of Krishna at the time of death. And if you can janma karma chamedivyam evam yo veti tapataha shadva deyam punardana naitime iti so Arjuna. If you think of Krishna at the time of death, then you don't have to take birth again. And so you can get free from your false ego. But there's no real education to teach people this. There's so many universities all over the world. They don't teach people that they're not the body. There's no department about the soul. So they don't teach people they're not the soul, they're not the body, they're a spirit soul. So the Krishna conscious movement, we have the medicine, and we have the cure, the process to get cured. Everyone in the material world is in a disease condition, thinking of Hamameti, that I'm this body, everything belongs to me. This is a disease condition. So you have to take the medicine. First you have to follow the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master. And he says, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regulated principles. Then you have to take the medicine, which is Krishna Prasadam. So devotee, we don't take anything that's not first offered to Krishna. In this way, we can gradually become purified from the modes of passion and ignorance, come to the mode of goodness. From the mode of goodness, you can come to the mode of pure goodness. Brahma Bhuta Prashana Man, Associati Nakanchati, Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhakti Mlapate Param. Then you understand that You're not this body. One is always joyful. He doesn't lament or hanker for anything. We're reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Bali Maharaj, how even though he was put into so much difficulty, he didn't have a false ego, which had him thinking that this is happening to me, and it's all wrong. It shouldn't be happening to me. Why is it happening to me? And people get in trouble. They blame God. They say, God, why are you doing this to me? Well, we shouldn't blame God for our suffering. It can't be avoided. So in any way, this identity, a false ego, Tanadapi Nichana, Turapi Sisana, Manina Mandana Kirtanya Salari. Lord Chaitanya said, one can think oneself more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others. This way, one can chant the holy name continuously. But you have to be tolerant like a tree. The tree stands in the weather. Summertime in Vrindavan is very hot. Wintertime is cold. Sometimes it's raining. Sometimes it's windy. The tree, people come, take the leaves. The monkey come, take the leaves. The government comes and cuts down the trees to widen the road. But in all cases, the tree doesn't protest. Say, no, why are you doing this to me? Stop that. Tree can't protest. So the tree is tolerant like a tree. And in that way, one can chant 24 hours a day. Kirtanya Sadhari. This is the recommended way to get free from false ego. So that was the first paragraph, false ego. Now I'll read the second one. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, disease, and old age. There are descriptions in various Vedic literatures of birth. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the world of the unborn, the child stays in the womb of the mother, is suffering, etc., are all very graphically described. Because it should be thoroughly understood that birth is distressful, because we forget how much distress we have suffered within the womb of the mother, do not make any solution to the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, at the time of death, there are all kinds of sufferings, and they are also mentioned in the authoritative scriptures. These should be discussed as far as the disease and old age are concerned. Everyone gets practical experience. No one wants to be diseased. No one wants to become old, but there is no avoiding these. Thus we have a pessimistic view of this material world, material life, considering the distresses of birth, death, old age, and disease. There is no impetus for making advancement in spiritual life. So you can go to the medical shop if you get sick and ask that can you give me something so I won't get old? They say no. Can you give me something that I won't die? They say no. Can you give me something to relieve my headache? They say yes. So they can. It's not that we should avoid these things are there, the miseries are there. It's not that they're not there. Even Srila Prabhupada occasionally took some allopathic medicine. According to Harisari, I asked him. In Srimad Bhagavatam, says seven, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1, verse 7, text number 6. The material miseries of living entity are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. So we have so many examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam of different devotees who tolerated the miseries. First of all, it says here that birth in the womb, being in the womb, is a very painful condition. And this is described by Lord Kapila Dev, and also was described by Lord Chaitanya in Chaitanya Bhagavat. That the living entity takes birth, and the seed is implanted in the womb, and the living entity begins to grow. And then after 7 months, it becomes conscious. So those who are fortunate living entities and remember their past lives can remember their past 100 lives. And they pray to the Lord that this will be the last time they have to enter the womb. And Lord Chaitanya told his mother this, and she said that because they pray after 7 months, they don't feel distress anymore. But here it says when the living entity comes out of the womb, then he forgets how much distress he went through. It's like after you leave this body, you may have to go to hell and suffer so many different ways. Hellish planets are described in the 5th canto, and different kinds of punishment are being given to the living entity. But he forgets. When he gets another body, he forgets that he had to go through that. And that keeps him entangled in the material world. So if we remember how much we suffered in the womb, then we wouldn't want to do it again. If we remember how much we suffer in hell, we wouldn't want to do it again. And because of the modes of material nature, because of the living entity is covered, we all we can't remember these things, although they do happen. It's like everyone knows that we were 6 months old, but we don't remember it. But it doesn't mean it didn't exist. So many things exist that we can't perceive, but we have to take some knowledge from the authority. If you want to know who your father is, you have to ask your mother. She's the authority. So we rely on the Vedic literature as the authority. It says that the bone of an animal is contaminated. So if you touch a bone of an animal, you have to take bath. But the conch shell is the bone of an animal, and that's considered pure. So we use that for artik. And also the cow dung and urine of a cow is considered pure. So we use that for Abhishek. And we know this because of the authority given in the Vedic literatures. So Vedic literature means end of knowledge. So all knowledge is there. So we don't have to, even though we don't remember these things, we are reminded by reading about it. That's the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev to Mother Devahuti in the third canto, describing all these things. And so now throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, describe these different things. Here it says one must have a pessimistic view to make advancement in spiritual life. So the devotees were preaching to some man in Juhu Beach. He went complaining to Prabhupada that your disciples are so negative about the material world. And couldn't understand what they were talking about. Prabhupada said, they're neophyte devotees, so they speak that way. But it's true, we do have a pessimistic outlook about the material world, but when we're preaching to people, we don't give them that impression. We give the impression, we try to preach to people in such a way that they'll get the positive side of Krishna consciousness and will want to become devotees. If they get the wrong impression, they think that devotees are pessimistic and see things as bad, they won't want to join us. They'll go to some other form of religion which doesn't tell them that, so they can continue with their sinful activities. So we have to be pessimistic in the fact that old age, Janma Mrityu Jaravati, is there. You take birth, you get disease, you get old, and you die. These are the four miseries of material life, and no one can stop that. They have so many planning commissions, so many organizations to stop so many things, to try to alter so many things in the material world, but no one can stop these things. It applies to everyone. In the 8,400,000 species of life, whether one's a demigod or a human being or a monkey or an insect, they get old and they have to die. So it applies to all living entities. Birth, death, disease, and old age. This relative. Lord Brahma lives for 100 years of his life, but then he asks also, if he's not performing devotional service, someone lives for many thousands and millions of years, demigods live for millions of years, but they're not free from death. They still have to take birth again, come back to the earth planet, according to their karma. So, the different living entities is all the relative according to their body. Everybody lives for 100 years according to their body, but their lifespan is relative according to the body. Well, an insect takes birth at night and dies in the morning. That's his 100 years. So Brahma lives for 100 years. It's 311 trillion years. So, but we live for 100 years, and Prahlad Maharaj describes in the 7th canto, the living entity spends his 100 years, first 50 years is spent sleeping. Everyone has to sleep a certain amount of time every day. So that's wasted. And Prabhupada was going to take rest one day. He said to his servant, now I'm going to waste my time. So, but Prabhupada only slept for 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours at night. They minimized it. The 6 Goswamis also, they minimized their eating and sleeping. Achahara Prashascha, the conqueror eating and sleeping. So, but we have to sleep a certain amount of time. Then, after the the living end takes, but the child for his first 10 years, he spends in playing. Then the next 10 years, he spends in sports and going to school. Then, when he gets old, the last 20 years of his life, becomes old and indolent to the point where he can't do anything himself. Someone has to help him with everything. And the body is decaying, and all the senses become very weak, and so finally he dies. And in the middle, the living entity spends his time in family life, which is the next paragraph, and I'll read that because we're running out of time. As for detachment from children home, wife home, is not meant that one should have no feeling for these. These are natural objects of affection. But when they are not favorable to spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy, because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, accept the remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna, absent discussion on books like Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. The family members can sit down morning and evening and chant together Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. If one is told can mold his family life in this way to develop Krishna consciousness, following these 4 principles, then there's no need to change from family life to renounced life. But if it's not congenial, not favorable for spiritual advancement, then family life should be abandoned. One must sacrifice everything to realize or serve Krishna, just as Arjuna did not want to kill his family members, but when he understood that these family members were impediments to his Krishna consciousness, to his Krishna realization, he accepted the instructions of Krishna and fought and killed them. In all cases, one should be detached from the happiness and distress of family life, because in this world, one can never be fully happy or fully miserable. So in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the force of material enjoyment, Yadbharat tells King Grihuguna that family life, there's no happiness in family life. And so but as soon as one gets married, one becomes attached to wife and children and all the rest. And his spiritual advancement becomes very slow. Prabhupada says, for householders, spiritual advancement is very slow or next to nil. So it's not that we shouldn't have affection for the family. That's a misconception. We shouldn't be cruel or to the wife and children. But at the same time, we should try to develop our Krishna consciousness. Raghunath Das Goswami came from a very wealthy family. His father was making 300,000 coins every month. He had a beautiful wife, looked like an angel. But this could not keep Raghunath Das at home. So he kept running away because he wanted to join Lord Chaitanya, and his father would send 10 men to bring him back. So this was a daily affair. So then they told Raghunath Das Goswami that he should stop this activity of running away. He should act like an ordinary pound, shilling, pence man, materialistic man, do your duty as a householder, but at the same time, in your mind, you should always think of the pastimes of Radha Krishna and Vrindavan. And in this way, there will come a time when you'll be able to get yourself released from family life. So Raghunath Das Goswami did that, and because he did that, the guards became relaxed. So one night, Yamuna, his spiritual master Raghunath Das, came to him and said there's a problem in the temple. You have to go to speak to the Pujari. He doesn't want to do the service anymore. So Raghunath Das said, yes, okay, I will do that. So they started walking to the temple. And Raghunath Das told us that, Guru, you can go home now. I'll take care of this matter. So he took that opportunity to leave home, and then he was able to leave home for good. In the same way, Srila Prabhupada was in family life, and his guru came to him 2 times in dreams and told him he should take sannyas. But Prabhupada wasn't happy to hear that. He wasn't ready to take sannyas. When Prabhupada got married, he told his father he didn't like his wife. He wanted to get another wife, but his father said, no, this is good. If you don't like your wife, you do need to take another wife. You'll be able to renounce it to your life later on. So one time, Prabhupada went out, came back, and he was looking for his Srimad Bhagavatam. He couldn't find his Srimad Bhagavatam. So he asked his wife, where's my Srimad Bhagavatam? She said, well, there wasn't any money in the house, and I needed some tea biscuits. So I went to the shop and gave the man your Bhagavatam for some tea biscuits. So Prabhupada said that you can choose. Now you have a choice, tea or me. Either stop drinking tea or I'm going to leave home. And she thought he was just joking, but she didn't stop drinking tea. Even though his wife was initiated, they didn't weren't so strict in those days about drinking tea. She didn't stop drinking tea, and Prabhupada took that opportunity to leave home and take Vanaprast and finally take sannyas. So if the home life is not favorable, then one should not stay in his family life. If the wife is not following the principles, then the husband should leave. If the husband is not following the principles, then the wife should leave. In either case, they should both be following the principles and both be trying to become Krishna conscious. And Krishna conscious is a concession for sense gratification, but the principle is no illicit sex. So family life is not to have, doesn't mean you can have as much sex life as you want. You can only have as much sex once a month for the purpose of begetting Krishna conscious children, not otherwise. Lord Rishabhdev told his sons, you should not become a mother, father, a demigod, spiritual master, unless you can deliver your dependents from the cycle of birth and death. So, if when family life, one does produce children, it's the responsibility of the parents to make them Krishna conscious. So in this way, family life is there. It's part of the Varnashram system, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. When Lord Chaitanya was traveling in South India, he met one Brahmin. His name was Kurma. And that Brahmin came to Lord Chaitanya and said that I am suffering in family life. Please let me go with you. But Lord Chaitanya said, no, you should stay in your family life. Yare dake tare kaha Krishna upadesh Amar agya guru hana tar e desh. Instruct everyone to follow the orders of Sri Krishna as they are given in Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master, and try to liberate everyone in the land. Sri Chaitanya further advised the Brahmin Kurma, if you follow this instruction, your materialist life at home will not obstruct your spiritual advancement. Indeed, if you follow this regulated principles, we will again meet here, or rather, you will never lose my company. So, whether one's brahmachari, vyasta, vanaprastha, sannyas, you should follow these instructions to follow the orders given in Lord Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and become a spiritual master and try to liberate the land. So, there are many other examples in Srimad Bhagavatam who people became detached from their family life. Maharaj Parikshit, when he heard he was going to die in 7 days, he immediately left his family, gave up his kingdom, gave up his animals, gave up his treasury, gave up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges or Yamuna, and he fasted, he didn't drink water, he didn't eat, didn't sleep for 7 days. Became completely detached. Lord Rishabdev was the king, had all opulence, but at the end of his life, he became an avadut. In other words, even while he was still the king, he became an avadut. He stopped bathing, stopped wearing clothes, and acted like a dull, dumb man. And he traveled the earth that way. Even though he was spiritually realized, people couldn't understand his identity. Sometimes people would spit on him, or they would throw garbage on him, or they'd beat him, or they'd call him bad names. But he tolerated all these things, and because he knew he wasn't the body, that he was a spirit soul. And he showed how to live a life of detachment as an avadut. And also, there are other examples. Bali Maharaj, he was the king of the demons, he had everything, but when Lord Vamadeva requested 3 steps of land, he gave that, and then he went from owning everything in the entire world to being a penniless beggar. So he became detached very quickly, and this is the part of the Srimad Bhagavatam that we're reading, the glories of Bali Maharaj, how he was able to detach himself from all his opulences. There are other examples in Srimad Bhagavatam of other personalities who did the same thing, that were able to, at the end of life, detach themselves from family life. The Prabhupada says it's the biggest abominable if someone stays in family life his whole life. He says at the age of 50 or so, one should renounce family life, take vanaprastha, and finally take sannyas. At the age after 60, when it's 65 or 70 years old, one should take sannyas and renounce the world completely. Sannyas life means material suicide. The sannyasi is completely detached from anything that does not foster Krishna consciousness. And a sannyasi never associates with women. Even so, this is the Srila Prabhupada. Even Srila Prabhupada was an old man, and he would never be in the room alone with a woman, even his sister. When his sister came in the room, he'd tell his servant to stay in the room. So generally, so this is a real sannyasi, not the so-called sannyasis that have 12 or 15 women sannyasis and are pretending to be sannyasis. So sannyas means body, mind, and words only in the service of the Lord, complete detachment. The 9th process Of the 9 processes of devotional service, the 9th process is to surrender everything to Krishna. Sarvadharma Prikchaja Mamekam Saranam Vraja Ham Tam Sarvapavaya Mokshashamamasacha. So in this way, one should become detached from everything and be a surrendered soul in all cases, and not keep himself entangled in the material world and family life, even though it's entangling and people can't understand that one has to give it up sooner or later. One can understand that there's no real happiness in family life. Even though one brahmachari thinks that if I get married, then I won't have to live under any authority, and that I'll be independent, and I'll have a nice wife, and she'll cook some nice prasadam for me and wash my clothes, and my life will be hunky-dory. But once he gets married, it may be true for 6 months or a year, but after that, he understands that actually there's no happiness in family life. You can ask any grihastha. One devotee told me that he got married, and after some time he said family life was useless, that there's no happiness there. So in this way, whether one stays brahmachari or gets married, we have to become Krishna conscious. So I'm going to end the class there. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavad-Gita ki jai.